It's possible to commit no mistakes and still lose. That's a quote from Star Trek. I'm not the biggest fan, but I think there is some truth in it, not just in life, which is what the quote refers to, but also in game dev. It's something that at this point, I have seen a lot of our audience's games. If I would put a number on it, probably over 200 games of our audience have launched in the past 1.5 years that this YouTube channel really took off. And some people even have commented on it of like, oh, Marnik said this game was gonna be a success, and look at it now, it has like 30 reviews or whatever. And those are games that have good visual styles, that have good interesting hooks, good mechanics. It has things on paper going for it that makes you look at it, okay, in a vacuum, this game should be a success. But for some reason, like that quote said, you can make no mistakes and still lose, or like not really do anything wrong. Sometimes it's just dumb luck that gets you from a mediocre success to a massive hit. And it's sometimes hard to plan for that, but I do want to talk about it. Now, I'm not talking, of course, about the obvious like asset flips, and I love some of you guys to death, but yeah, if you're making a 2D platform with shitty art and no interesting mechanics, yeah, of course, it's not going to be the biggest success on Steam. But some of the games, like I said, they had everything going for it. They even tried their best, they tried the marketing, they did everything, and still didn't go anywhere, or didn't really go where I would expect it to go. And I think the first thing that we need to just establish, and that I need to tell you, is that at the end of the day, there is no foolproof way to make games. If there was a foolproof way to make games and make them successfully, the game dev scene wouldn't have been like a massive layoff crisis for the past 2 years at this point. And publishers like Playway, definitely they come close to a perfected approach, you might think, where all of their games are very successful, but that's not even the case. They generally just put up 10 Steam pages, and whichever one performs the best, that's like whichever one they take, which means that a lot of ideas still don't take off. And even then, yeah, AAA studios have this, indie games have this, where the previous indie games they released were like massive successes. They make a second game and it's like, somehow they can't capitalize on that. And even going outside of PC game dev, you see this a lot with VC, venture capital, mobile game studios. And even they don't have a foolproof way of guaranteeing success. Of course, they can do things like, hey, just throw a whole bunch of ad spend on it and we can get more people to play the game. But that doesn't always translate to actually financial success, good return on ad spend, and all of those things. At the end of the day, a lot of game development, and this sucks, but a lot of game development is still tied to luck. And that's something I think you need to understand, that you have to get lucky to a certain degree. Now, don't click off this video because it's like, oh, Marnik said I need to get lucky and I'll never get lucky. No. I'm very firmly of the belief that luck is something that you can manufacture. You can make yourself lucky. Luck is just the fact that, hey, you do more of a certain repetition. If you apply to more festivals, if you make more games, there's a bigger chance you're gonna get into one of those festivals. If you send more emails throughout your entire dev cycle to the same YouTubers, there's a bigger chance that at some point they'll be like, fuck it, we ball, and they cover your game. And you get lucky because, hey, the YouTuber covered your game. I think it's not the approach to be like, oh, I sent out one email and it's like, oh, they didn't respond. Well, unlucky, my game is gonna fail. No, you keep going at it, and maybe you'll get lucky. You just have to keep trying, and at some point something will stick. But there's no guarantee that you'll basically reach that point where something will stick before you release. That's another problem. So the good news is that, yeah, you can fabricate luck, but it's going to take some effort, unfortunately. It's not going to be where, hey, I'm gonna post this one cool GIF on XD Everything app, and then suddenly I'm gonna get 1 million views on my game and people are gonna sign up for my mailing list and my wish list and my game's gonna be a massive success. That's also not gonna be the case. You have to fabricate your luck in this case by just throwing more at it. You don't see those failed games often. You don't see those failed marketing attempts because the algorithms are incentivized to push them down. Because, of course, if something else is popping off, why would they show you like some random guy's shitty proof of concept? Probably not really interested in that. Now, luck aside, what are some other issues that I do see that these games may have of, hey, why do they fail? And the first one is making the game that you want to make, the developer, but that at the end of the day, nobody else really wanted you to make. And this is something where, you know, a lot of guys in the comments was like, I want to make the game that no one else has made, that I want to play. And it's like a mismatch of some of the genres maybe that they played growing up. And it's like, cool. And if you're lucky, you have a genre that you really like to play and a lot of other people like to play. But at the same time, you may be making a genre that only 5 people in the world are interested in. And yeah, it's going to be a bit harder to, even if you get lucky and an influencer covers your game, to have a conversion into things like wishlists, because people just aren't interested in that. That is something that I've seen as well. Shout out to, for example, all my homeboys making vehicular combat shooters. And it's like, yeah, Crossout is a big game, but Crossout was a game that came out almost 10 years ago. that doesn't apply anymore usually to what is coming out today. Markets change, and what was popular 10 years ago probably isn't popular today anymore. Try making a MOBA hero shooter right now. It's not a good moment, if you may not have been able to tell. So making the game that you want to make, it's good to a certain degree, as long as you don't expect to like get hella rich of it. If you don't really look at, okay, do other people want me to make that game? We talked about it before, market research, it's a whole thing. Just take a look. Do people still buy this game? Do people make these kinds of games still? And if you're going to be the one guy who's like, oh my god, no, you would never be able to find a similar game to mine because my game idea is so unique and so brilliant, nobody else has made it before, I urge you to look strongly into the mirror, because you have different problems then. Because if you're making a game that is so vastly different from everything else that people lose their frame of reference for what it's supposed to be, and they purely have to imagine, hey, this is what the game's gonna be off like the screenshots, but they can't tie it back to a game that they are like, oh, it's like SimCity or whatever, it's gonna get a lot harder once again. So that is some other problems. I'm not gonna divulge into that, but generally try to stay a little bit similar to a game genre that already exists and find something and stand out above that. Because that leads me into the second thing, making a game that you want to make and people want you to make as well, but you're not adding anything new to the table. We see this with, of course, my lovely 2D platformers, but even with things like city builders, for example. People who play city builders, they love city builders, they just eat them. Same with, I think, even more automation games. The problem is, if you're making a game that is inferior in all aspects to another game in the genre, that we kind of had this with like Factory Town and Forge Industry. Those were like two games that we wanted to strive for Factory Town. The problem is we didn't deliver on the visuals, we didn't deliver on the mechanics, we didn't really deliver on anything that Factory Town didn't do like 4 times better, if we're being honest. And then yeah, sure, there will still be some interest, but you will never break out of that and reach the success basically if you're not innovating in at least one thing. And sometimes, hey, it could be as simple as a different setting, whether you are a crime scene cleaner or another kind of cleaner, whatever Playway is making right now, that could be enough. Sometimes it is a little extra mechanic. We got close with Forge Industry, but the implementation was just so bad that we shouldn't have bothered with the fact that, hey, we have no conveyor belts. That was an interesting extra thing, but once again, implementation wasn't there. Then, yeah, if you're making something that other games are better at in all regards, you're not going to be a reason for people to want to buy your game. You have to stand out in at least something. The bar of quality is pretty high, and this sucks to hear, but if you can't reach that bar, you shouldn't expect people to be like, yes, I'm so excited for this game, I want to buy it, I want to play it, and all of that. So ask yourself, am I adding extra stuff here? Am I adding more here that other games didn't already add? And sometimes it could be like, hey, the visuals are really good, and just that alone is a good thing. Sometimes it is actual new mechanics, sometimes it's something completely different. There's a lot of ways you can approach it, but you should stand out in at least something and not just be a little bit better at it, but truly excel at it and make that the core thing about your game. And then the last one that I do often see as well, now once again, this is something where I have also seen people actually try their best at marketing, because that's the thing I often see people not do, really try their goddamn hardest, sending out the hundreds of emails, but still get nowhere, in which case, go back to the previous 2 points most likely of you're making a game nobody else wants, or you're making a game that other people want but just doesn't add anything new. But a lot of people also are just like, I'm not gonna do marketing, or like it's like, oh, marketing is dumb, good game will sell itself. Like I've said this before, good game will sell themselves. I think it's not a valid approach to game development. I think you actively need to market your game. Of course, you don't need to spend as much time marketing the game as you're spending actually making the game, but marketing is something that you should think about the entire process. Don't just tack it on the last 2 weeks before releasing your game, and you should do it with an actual, like, don't send emails to 10 influencers. 10 influencers is not enough. Once again, you're making your own luck, and marketing, yeah, it goes much farther. I've made a video about it as well of like, hey, marketing starts with your game genre, starts with all of that. Those things are important as well, but you should at least try. It's so miserable sometimes when I see people and they spend 7 years on developing their game, or however long it is, and then the last 2 weeks they realize, oh, my game is gonna come out and I have 200 wishlists. Now let me try and contact YouTubers. It's too late then. That is something that does pain me to see. So really quick rundown. I've made videos on marketing before, but basically have stuff to talk about in your game and kind of like try them to time them, like, hey, new trailer, new demo, I'm participating in a special Steam festival or whatever, and use those once again to knock down those doors of those other YouTube influencers, content creators, and be like, hey, I have a cool new reason to want to talk about my game that stands out because of this. Like, remember, always be interesting as well as a good game, and keep going at it. And we're talking about reaching out to hundreds of people for marketing, reaching out to probably dozens of different press contacts if we're looking at like scale numbers to give you a good idea. Things like devlogs, if you have good results with devlogs, and of course you can do devlogs and all of that, but generally it doesn't work as well, but you have to fucking try. If you're not trying, well, don't complain that your game didn't go anywhere. So if you want to figure out a little bit more about like what exactly you should do, especially with content marketing and press, I've got 2 videos over there. I'll probably make them appear like 5 seconds apart. So this one is for content creators, and then I don't know, I'll just wait a second. This one is for press. Both of these videos are really good, if you ask me, and it's things where, hey, I've sat down with press. We've actually gotten very good press coverage as well, and we've done it for ourselves. I think it's not hard. It doesn't cost you any money. Just go through the motions. It's gonna help a lot already. Because, hey, certain games are of course unmarketable, but assuming you're not making an asset flip, usually at least somebody will buy it. And that is all you need, because once you have one person, you can snowball that as leverage. Something like, hey, they talked about my game, you should talk about my game as well. Now, even if you did all of these things, you made a game that was exceptionally a specific thing, you did your marketing, you did all of that, let's go back to the start of the video. It's possible to make no mistakes and still lose. That's life. That is unfortunately also game dev. So at that point, the only thing you can do is just take it on the chin, be like, okay, I fucked up. A pro tip here, if your game failed, make a YouTube video about the earnings. Don't do devlogs, but just make a video about the earnings, because that shit always gets views from other game devs, maybe you also watching. Those are the videos that I've learned consistently. If there is a surefire cheat code to getting views on YouTube, make a video talk about your earnings. And ideally, the more miserable, the more people will like look at it, and maybe you'll get some pity buys. It kind of saved Forge Industry because we didn't get to the 10 review mark otherwise. So that is a little like life pro tip. And then just move on, because if you didn't get lucky with one game, well, luck doesn't just stay within one project. You can get more lucky with the next project. You'll have learned more from, hey, why did my game not perform as well as I expected? Was it because of, hey, I didn't excel, I didn't have good art style, I didn't try marketing, I made a game nobody wanted? Whatever it is, take that on to the next game and it'll probably be better. You need to really do your best, honestly, to make a second game that is worse than your first game. So I believe in you. Keep working at it. We make content here 2 times every week, talking about game development and the things we learn along the way, making our own games, trying to market them, trying to sell them, all of that. If you're interested in that, be sure to head down below and subscribe. It makes me happy, and you get these videos delivered straight to your subscription box. So thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, of course, leave them in the comments down below and I'll try to respond to them as best as I can. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!